volunteer to do that kind of thing, 'cause it's neat to be able to talk to these kind of people and really kind of get to know them. And you can do that in a 2.5-hour car ride. In fact, we even stopped on the way back and flew a pond and got a duck with a furry, but just really kind of topped everything off, but really had a good time with Morley. Now, I can't give him a good introduction. I mean, but Hal Webster, the lifelong friend of Morley, has known him for many years. Hal can do justice to that, and I want Hal to come up and introduce Morley Nelson.
It's nice to see all my friends in the Texas Club. And I don't know if you know, but I'm planning to spend 6 months of my life down in this Abilene area with my new lady Ruth. And we'll be at least residents for 6 months, and the rest of the time we'll be in Montana, in the heart of the Sharptail grouse areas, and fly fishing. I am most appreciative of the invitation tonight to introduce a very dear old friend of mine. Morley and I got together through correspondence, and I hate even to tell you this because you don't believe the people that old anymore, but this was in the 30s. Morley got his first bird in 1927. I got mine in 1935, and of course he's much older than I am. I think that he is probably from the World War I era instead of World War II. Tonight, you really have a hero in the audience tonight. I don't know how many servicemen we have here, but Morley is a holder of 2 Silver Stars, 2 Bronze Stars, and 2 Purple Hearts. I guess everything comes in pairs. But he was a paraski trooper that trained in Aspen, Colorado. He was a graduate of North Dakota State University and has been a soil scientist for many years. He was in the invasion of the Aleutian Islands, Adak and Attu, Kiska, and he was also in Italy where he was very, very seriously wounded. You never want to give Morley too much to drink at any one time because he's got more bullet holes and he'll just flows right out. We've had some great times together, and one of the incidents that really come to mind, we both had rather humble beginnings in little houses when we started out with walls that were paper thin, but I won't go into that conversation more. But when he came up to visit me in Pocatello, Idaho, he had an old Chevy station wagon, and it probably had 1 million or 2 miles on it at least. The was a Woody with and sideboards and all the rest of that. And we'd had a little trouble with the ignition, and so we parked it on a driveway coming out of my drive that night, and left and went inside and had a few libations and a little drinks and so on and so forth. And in the morning, knowing that the darn thing probably wouldn't start it, Morley got into the Chevy, and I gave it a push, and down the highway it went out in the street, and he's hitting the choke and hitting the gas pedal, and nothing seemed to work. And I said, Morley, and there on the ground was a transmission. So we've had some wonderful times together. Morley has given his life to raptors and birds of prey, and on the side to make a living. He was a soil scientist and was one of the early designers of techniques to predict the water that was coming down these streams with temperatures of various degrees. And it's quite an involved science. You have to go up and take snow surveys all over the area and how deep it is, and then that's keyed together with the temperature and how much snow there is in the hills, and they finally come up with an answer that is quite amazing. It's pretty close to what they're going to have. I'm not going to go into that other than to say that Morley's had a great lifetime with a great family and with kids that are in the business now with him. And he's really somebody to look up to. And if you want to know stories, I can tell you some, but when we get in mixed groups, it won't be quite so bad. But we've got a hell of a time going to do all these things. I don't know how many more years I have. He'll go on forever, but at 77, I'm probably one of the senior deputies in here. It's with great pleasure that I introduce as your speaker tonight, Morley Nelson.
It's hard for me to start after such a wonderful story about our feelings and the depth of the relationship that we've had for over 50 years is a wonderful thing, as is my being here at all tonight with you, with so many of you having such similar and such wonderful knowledge and understanding and comparison and reputation for the wonderful things that you do and how you understand the depth of all life on this planet, and particularly with the eagles and the falcons and all the birds and hawks that we use, and that wonderful philosophy and that wonderful ability to understand and to work with these birds is unique in the world. And it started a long, long time ago. And this is my main function for being here tonight, besides being out of gold and behind time and the big money deals. We've had all the actors that you're going to see tonight work for us for nothing, and they helped us to get the conservation going. But my main message for you here tonight is what I need to write up in a long episode for the Journal of American Falconry. Falconer, I've been all over the world. I've been over to Arabia as a guest of the ruling tribes of Arabia. 3 different times, starting way back in the 60s. I did the first film, and where I was flying a gerfalcon tundra to the lure, and the Arabs, sheikhs who were members of the British Falconer Club, which I'm also a member of, ran this film. And this is when I realized the power of the film industry, because the ruler of Kuwait called me up and said, Mr. Nelson, we want you to come over to Arabia and as our guest. We'll take you to Iran and Iraq, but you've got to show us how you fly falcons the way you do to the light lures. Well, I sent a letter back and I said, well, I have the publication that was published, I don't know, 1,000 years ago in Arabia, translated, and I'm not doing anything different except I do fly the light lure different than everybody. Well, they said, we don't care. We saw that film that you were doing in that gerfalcon. Of course, you was a gerfalcon catching ravens and crows and magpies and pheasants and ducks and everything else. She was a fabulous bird, there's no doubt about it. And they were really impressed. So I've been over there 3 times as their guest. And I recognize how beautiful and how wonderful they believe about it. But I've also been in England and Oxford and given this, when we did the film Silver Wires, Golden Wings, where I redesigned the power lines and made the nesting platforms for the eagles and the falcons and the hawks on the power lines. That went around the world. And man, it is going in every nation now. And because the human population is shoveling the birds out of their ancestral homes, the eagles and the falcons and everybody else. And when you put one of these nesting platforms up with the shade and the wind shade and up their way and in the prey base, 2 days afterward, everybody said, no eagle is going to live on 500,000 volts, 28 feet from the line. I put up 2 platforms, and 2 days later I had 2 pairs of eagles. And then I realized when we put up 42 pairs of them all the way across Wyoming and Idaho and all the way down to California, those birds, every kind of bird of prey moved in there. But the main message that I want to leave with you, and that's what you're going to see tonight, is everything that I have accomplished was a function of my family. My son's going over the cliffs. Everything you see in here was done with us hanging on the ropes, and when you see these birds feeding their young in the cliffs and all, was done hanging over a rope. And they all started climbing with me, and my daughter did the same thing. I owe everything that I've accomplished to my own family. But they're having a heck of a time making a living because they don't do sex and crime violence. They do birds of prey, which is hard to sell to the big guns. But I have a problem. And I appreciate the gold that this group has afforded me to come here tonight and to be here. But more than that, I appreciate more. I have been in the war in a very rugged situation. I have had many of my men killed in war. And I've stood up in many times when I was honored for being lucky enough to be alive, ladies and gentlemen. That's all I can say it was. And yet tonight, I'm more proud of being here with all of you folks who think the same way down the trail as I have always thought, than I have ever been in any other recognition that I've ever gotten any place in the world. And I've been a lot of places that strange recognition that is kind of silly to talk about. But it is the art of falconry that is the basis of everything that you're going to see on this little program tonight. It is the art of falconry that has resulted in the conservation, the understanding, and the preservation of the raptors in every nation in the world. It started old. It was famous. As many of you know, Genghis Khan took the world with 20,000 falconers. He fed the whole army when he captured the world. Marco Polo went over there and studied that and wrote all that up. And this is how we got it, you see. But when gunpowder, and until then, so gunpowder, the falconry was 10 times, as you all know, better than the spear or the crappy bow and arrows, or even today. It's better than the guns if you're going to go out hunting. But then it was competition, and we started shooting our birds, and we had a problem. But in every case, it's true in England, it's true in Arabia, it's true in all of the European nations, and in Arabia, that the art of falconry has provided the background for it. And a classic example of it was, the first film I did for Disney was in the theater called The Living Desert. I trained a red tail to kill a rattlesnake, which they do every day by the thousands in the West. As you all know, a hawk can eat the poison of a rattlesnake, and you can too, if you don't get it in your blood and you don't get it in the sore in your mouth. I've seen an old eagle pull the head off of a big fat rattlesnake and feed the head fangs and all to its baby's the eagle, and she swallows the whole head, and that's fine. And then he goes on, and they do it every day. And they beat him to the draw, as you'll see in the film tonight too. I had 9 eagles with rattlesnakes to do this, but they learned to strike all of them, the red tails and the golden eagles and all the hawks to take snakes, because the ordinary snake play like a rattlesnake, and they strike quicker than the rattlesnake does. The minute the bird walks close to a bull snake, he starts to strike and say, I'm a bat. It's playing like a rattlesnake. Therefore, the hawk and the owl learn to beat the snakes to the draw with that foot. And you can throw at one of those eagles that I have at home a ball of meat that big around. If you can throw it right at his chest, it will let it get 2 feet or less from his chest before he moves a foot. He sits there, bam! He reaches up and takes the other foot and puts it down. And when that rattlesnake, as you'll see in the film, I think it's in this film, I'm pretty lost. The rattlesnake is going along with his head open, and the old eagle reaches up and snares him by the head and crushes his head and breaks his back, drops him, rolls over, and says, okay, and then he eats them all, fangs and all. But the main message that I want to leave with you tonight is that the world needs to recognize that the art of falconry is the basis to understanding and conservation and future of the birds of prey in the world. And that always has been. And this is the group that can do the most about it. And we'll talk more about it, and I will write more about it in the things that are coming. But I feel wonderful to be able to share with you tonight the personal feeling that comes in flying the eagles and the falcons and understanding the beauty and the grace and the stability of their life. Standing there on their fist and doing and looking at you and saying, I trust you as a friend. It is a deep, deep feeling that you've all had, or you wouldn't be here. So I am very proud to be a part of you here tonight, and I don't want to take up too much of your time. And I'll break into this film once in a while to explain a couple of things. But one of the things that I want to relate to you that really happened when we did Idaho the Offbeat Eagle, my family trained 8 eagles to be that one. You're going to see one tonight. And the anthropomorphism of these beautiful eagles, understanding of them, and playing with men, as you're going to see in this film tonight, in that whole film called Idaho the Offbeat Eagle. The eagle saved the old man's life and the little goat's life because the old man could train him, he got trained, and he could throw his boot up, and he fell off of a cliff trying to save his little goat that fell over the cliff, and he took his boot off with his lariat and threw it in the air, and the eagle grabbed his boot and flew it over the top and locked it up so he could climb up, and he saved his own life. And that's all in the film. Now, you're not going to see that tonight, but that is Idaho the Offbeat Eagle. And the result was the anthropomorphism of people seeing what you see when this eagle playing the cup game with a piece of meat. You can't help, but every nation that saw that, and in Russia, they said, we want this nation to see it, and they didn't charge Walt Disney federal tax to show it, and he made many millions of dollars more than he would have otherwise, because he's paid not one dime of tax to show that in Russia. And most of the nations did the same thing. And the United States paid the money to shoot the golden eagles and the bald eagles until we did that film, and then they quit, and so did every other nation. I'm very proud. And I'm very proud of my family because I couldn't have done a thing without my family. You don't train 8 eagles alone. And you wear some scars, and so do they. And I'll tell you one funny one about my son who was 13 years old. We had this one big eagle here, and he was working with them, and he was well, he wasn't 13, he was about, probably in junior high school. And we had this big eagle, and we were doing this in the backyard and doing this film. And Tyler, and I said, well, Ty, now you can go in and put this meat in here with the eagle. And we were trying to do this one scene here, but I said, you don't want to let him see you do anything with that eagle except feed. Well, that's all right. So he went in there, and of course the old eagle was doing it right, so he put his meat in his hind pocket. And of course he turned around to leave and come out and said, well, Dad, I got to do this. And the old eagle comes bam and grabs him by the butt. Takes the eagle out of his pocket. I mean, the meat out of his pocket. And of course, he went to school the next day, and he was sitting on his sore fanny. And the teacher said, Tyler Nelson, you've got to sit still. What do you come to school here and wiggling around all the time and sitting and changing your position all the time? He said, well, you have to go in and tell the principal what's the matter with you, why you're showing so much trouble in school here. Well, he went to the principal and he said, well, an eagle grabbed me yesterday. He went home in my face. So the principal called up home and said, what in the world are you talking about? That you're fucking the fancy. He's having trouble in school. Well, I had to admit that's what happened. The old principal said, well, all right, but don't let that happen again. But we can't go any longer on this. I know we've all got a long ways to go tonight, but I'm very, very proud to be able to share this with you. And I will break in on this one time, but you will see in this film many cases where the anthropomorphism or the inspiration that humanity has always had from the birds of prey, and you all know it better than anybody, that is the factor that's described in the Bible of an eagle. Anyone who's ever seen a falcon make their swoop, it's the fastest single action in the universe. Nothing matches. When a falcon makes her swoop from 1,000 feet, he's reaching terminal velocity on the bottom. And it is one of the most beautiful and inspirational things you can say, and yet still be carrying on and work as your friend and your hunting partner, which you've all felt. It's so great. And this is what I want to share. We've got to work together now, and I've got to take the lead because I'm probably the oldest character here and the most bullet-hole one is beside. But the thing that I've got to do is lead. The same thing that we've seen here. We must do a film because that does, beyond all the science, and beyond all of, as you'll see in this thing tonight, it changes humanity overnight. When those people, I took silver wires, golden wings in England to the big university. What is it? All right, yeah. That big university, and I gave it there, and they put it in many languages, and I gave it in the international conference in this called Silver Wires, Golden Wings, and all of this changed. Now we've got nesting platforms all over the world, and it all is a function, has everything in this film that you're going to see of the art of falconry. And that's why I'm so proud to be here and to be able to share it with you. So now we'll see this film. I'll break in on it once in a while and make a couple of comments beyond what you're going to see. But you'll see, we did these films with, some of you are old enough to know Marlon Perkins and Jim Fowler. And Walt Disney has been there talking about the film when we did Idaho the Offbeat Eagle, because I had 13 Bose-old eagles in my county in Boise, Idaho, when I started shooting films of the eagles I was trying to train. And I went on TV and asked people to bring me wounded eagles, and I got 13 of them in 1 month. So that's when we started it, and it's still going on. We had 12 eagles last year in Idaho, shot, poisoned, or trapped, and we're still got to keep going with what we're doing. But the art of falconry is the basis of all of it, and this is what we've got to carry on, and this is what the message I want to leave with you tonight. And I also want to leave the message, I'm a proud son of a gun and a lucky one to be here at all. So let's see what's going on.